Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a SumerDaily Live presentation. After Monday Night Football, we have my brother in football loving Shawn Syed on the pod today to discuss a game that probably did not really tell us much, but we still loved it all the same. Shawn, tell us how you're doing, man.
Sam, I'm doing great. I live in Dallas. Of course, I grew up in New Jersey, and I face this tough issue with my nephews who they're young, right? Like they're not even starting kindergarten yet. I got 3 of them. And like they're wearing Dak Prescott jerseys, they're wearing Micah Parsons jerseys, and I try my best not to like be a fan of any team. You want to be an objective analyst, but I don't know. Do you push the kids away from wanting to root for them? Do you just subject them to the future of this? I worry about their future.
As a Saints fan, I typically push people away from America's team. I think they're more America's team in the Homelander fashion than the Captain America fashion, but that's just me. But that is an interesting conundrum that you have because you want to root for the hometown team, baby. You want to be part of that community. You want to be going into Jerry World. And so as we talk about, haters and appreciators from this game, as we tend to do on these live broadcasts, apparently Jerry World, AT&T Stadium is just becoming like the Phantom of the Opera House, where there's like booby traps for people who are performing for his own team there. The roof falls off during the middle of the day. There's all kinds of narratives going on. The play is being affected. Shawn, what is going on up there in Arlington?
Sam, it's not that far from the house. I've done a tour of the stadium. There's like an art museum. There's some cool restaurants. There's a nice downtowny sort of area just in the general vicinity. It's, of course, close to the Texas Rangers Stadium as well. And, the whole roof thing, right? Like, I am Mr. Play all the games in the dome. Like, why are we opening the roof? Why do we want to play outside? That's bad for my narrative at the start. Of course, I'm very happy that not one person was injured. Hopefully everyone stays safe. But what just an awful bad vibes moment for like you try and open the roof. You try and make it maybe look a little bit pretty. And then they open up the broadcast talking about how the roof is open. I mean, can we get our guy the notes a little bit earlier? Like he picks himself up kind of halfway through there. I feel like we could get that information up to the booth a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and it's an active sabotage of the players at this point. I mean, we had CeeDee Lamb staring into the sun, and then they flip the camera, and the poor cameraman is being bombarded by glare on what was that, last week? And then now the turf is causing Brandon Aubrey to slip, and then we're all like, oh, like he's cursed, but then he hits a 64-yarder, and I'm inclined to blame the playing surface at that point. I know there was a little bit of controversy with Justin Tucker doing that, but brother, if you hit a 64-yarder in this game, go ahead, take your pick of what happened on the first one. Just to break it down, though, I think the roof falling off as they tried to make this nice is a great metaphor for kind of what happened to the Cowboys in this game. Would you agree, Shawn?
I mean, I feel like the metaphor is more like it's not even like a stadium at that point, right? Like we go into this game, I think both expecting the Texans to be able to get on track back on track in different ways. And, maybe the offense doesn't hit it the way that we want to, but of course you're bringing, a backup quarterback there. You're just in a tough spot where it's such an unfortunate place to be from a narrative perspective for the Cowboys as a whole. When you look at the rest of the NFC East, of course, the Eagles are leading the way. The Commanders are moving in the right direction with Jaden Daniels. The Giants are flipping out quarterbacks, and now the Cowboys to just kind of have to sit through the rest of the season. I think it is a really, really rough situation where I don't even know, like the roof, like they can't open the roof. You have Cooper Rush dropping back like 50 times a game. You're just hoping to kind of sim to end the season in a few ways when you have players like Micah Parsons, like CeeDee Lamb, who are still playing so well. And it's such an unfortunate thing where in like a part of their prime is unfortunately burned on a year like this.
Yeah, and there's just not a lot at this point to be really excited about with the Cowboys, unfortunately. Like Dak's injury just seems, like so painful, like literally hamstring detaching from the bones. That can't be good. Cooper Rush comes in, not really able to make it happen with CD all game. Lots of targets, lots of miscommunication. I was hoping the narrative for this game was going to be that like Micah Parsons puts on the Superman cape and saves the day and just absolutely, annihilates a Texans offensive line that has not performed super well. That kind of happened to a certain degree, but not enough. The run defense is still really, hateable in terms of the way they're performing. Joe Mixon has a lovely day, and that running offense has had problems despite Joe Mixon having a pretty big year in terms of like, the end of the day production. It just was not a great game. And to kind of conclude this little hating segment, because there is appreciation to be found in this game, folks. There is appreciation. Something that I absolutely hate is bad special teams. Man, I was not the greatest college football player on earth, but I could give hard effort and follow the rules and not get penalties on special teams. And we just saw all kinds of rough stuff on special teams today, Shawn. Wouldn't you agree?
Hard effort and following the rules. That's a Sam Bruchhaus. That's your tagline. That's who you are. You hustle and you don't go outside the lines. Yeah, this was a fun special teams game. That fake punt early on, you could argue maybe that's a good special teams play for the Texans to have the wherewithal. You're dropping a player back there and being smart. We of course get that muffed kickoff. We have the doink on the slip, which I have not met someone that loves the particular instance of a doinked field goal as much as you, Sam. There's a sweet sound to it. It's like obviously a home run off the foul play. It's different than that, but you love to see that. I suppose then you mentioned that 64-yard field goal, which on the broadcast, they were at like the Cowboys were at their own like 48-yard line. So it would have been like a massive, like almost 70-yard field goal. And the broadcast immediately like, oh yeah, these guys are in field goal range. And we kind of laughed about it. And then he nails that 64-yarder. You get the personal foul from the Texans by Eagles legend Derek Barnett, who had a touchdown later, which we will certainly talk about, for a head slap. Just like you hear it on the broadcast too, just a funny situation where that happens. Then you get that sick punt by the Texans in the fourth quarter. So, the special teams film, Sam, I'm not going to pretend like I download it that often. There's usually has to be a specific play, or obviously I spent so much time watching all those kickoffs in the offseason. It's just a funny reminder that how much analysis we do, how much film we watch, how many of the stats that we really grind. There's a lot of just variance things that happen in this game that are so far like out of anyone's control sometimes, between a slip, between a kind of silly penalty here and there.
Yeah, and you mentioned the head slap. Like, I will note, field goal block is probably the location on the field where the rules are followed the least and the rules are purposely broken the most. When you're trying to get a field goal block, it's already so low probability. There's a lot of stuff going on, particularly on the interior of that line. There's holding guys and falling on the ground, hoping that they'll just fall on top of you so someone can jump over them. There's, what we used to call the cycle technique, which is coming off the edge and like literally like kind of throwing yourself off of two of your own guys, cycling over and trying to get a block. There's just insane instances on both sides of grabbing and going after people's knees. I gotta say, I've never seen anything as egregious as the head slap. Particularly, everyone's like, oh, great, a 64-yard field goal, flag on the field. What was that? Okay, maybe he's lined up over the center. They go to the wide copy, and it's just like, wait, I don't actually see what is going on. And then ESPN gives us that, lovely 4K zoom in. And it was about the craziest head slap I think I've ever seen. It was either just like a very inaccurate swim move that was just so powerfully violent that it almost led to him blocking the kick, or it was like, Jackie Chan level Taekwondo, just accuracy, like death punch to the dome and just smoking a guy to the fact that he like completely leaves his gap completely open and Derek Barnett kind of runs through, doesn't end up making the play. Field goal ends up going in, but certainly an interesting play, certainly something that does happen. I played on punt return for years and we had all kinds of tips and tricks, long dead arm, long arm, back strap. I'm running down the field with my face mask on the guy's back, just completely holding him, but it never gets called. You pick up a thing or two, but can't say that the head slap is in the repertoire, but we'll give him a little bit of appreciation for accuracy on his strikes. And speaking about appreciating accuracy on the strikes, like, man, the Texans defense looks like they're back, and particularly the DB room looks like it's back, Shawn.
It's certainly easy to look back when you're playing against the Cowboys with a backup quarterback. I do think Derek Stingley deserves a lot of credit in this game where Houston wants to play an attacking front. They want to lock up on the outside. The Stingley, CeeDee Lamb reps, I can't wait to watch those back on film. I think that will be a lot of fun. He, of course, had an interception where Lamb gets bumped. He's moved off of his route. Is that a flag? I don't know, Sam. You just admitted to violating a bunch of rules in the rule book, but that's past the statute of limitations. We don't have to worry about that at all. Of course, Stingley had a few chances to have even more interceptions, but I do think that this defense has the ability to close the game down, where Danielle Hunter played really, really well. Of course, Will Anderson was out in this game, but they can have a really strong pass rushing edge duo. You're able to get that push inside. You're able to play tight to routes. And, if you can create you have the interception, obviously, like you're able to get that fumble, which I can't wait to talk about in a little bit here. The defense, I think, can close games where on the offensive side, you are still struggling, in that rushing success rate category, particularly, even though, Mixon had a good box score at the end of the day. It may be sometimes that the defense has to lead the unit overall.
Yeah. And you mentioned Danielle Hunter. I really appreciated his spin moves in this game. That's a thing that he's kind of had in his bag going back to his LSU days. But it's still a thing of beauty. We saw him do it last week to much avail. We saw him do it again to get pressure on Cooper Rush and cause lots of problems for him throughout the game. It's just something that it seems like the best pass rushers have, but is very, very difficult to pull off consistently. And when you are able to do it a lot, you end up with a career like Danielle Hunter, where he's making, tens of millions of dollars. He's now one of the centerpieces of one of the better defenses in the league, and you're able to get pressure on quarterbacks, and that's extremely valuable to the game. And speaking of guys who we have appreciated over the years, at least a guy that we have appreciated on one of these live broadcasts before, Jalen Petrie continues to be a nuisance to offenses and continues to make explosive plays for the defense. And this one was particularly explosive. It also had a lot of beef to it. Tell us about that play, Shawn.
Sam, a fantastic play in so many ways. Obviously, just wonderful content to be able to watch. Of course, a little unfortunate for the Dallas Cowboys, but Barnett comes across the edge. You're able to force a fumble. The offensive lineman picks it up, which, Sam, I have to ask you, if you're an offensive lineman, I have it at 1,000% that you're picking up that ball and running, right? Like, you are taking your moment for glory. You are not falling on that ball. You're going down as a legend, right? I think that has to be what it is.
Yeah, if we're talking about old war stories, spring game, my sophomore year, ball comes out on a jet sweep. I had to thumbs down, push the ball through the ground, pick it up, keep it tight to the chest, take it back for a touchdown. If you're an offensive lineman, I don't know if the rules are probably the same. Like my 40 was probably substantially faster than Tyler Guyton's, and I'm not the fastest guy by any means. I think you probably just want to be safe. You want to curl up almost like it's an onside kick. You want to, if guys start getting on you, you start kicking. If we're just, like pulling out all the tips and tricks on this show tonight, Shawn, just, start getting the legs moving a little bit on the bottom of the pile, stand back up, live to fight another day. But you know what? In that situation, Tyler Guyton, pick it up, but let's ball security, man. Ball security. We teach everyone how to block. We teach everyone ball security. Tyler Guyton just did not have it on that play. And thus we get perhaps the first in a long time, at least that I've seen, of the thick recovery run into a thick six, which is something. It's so rare. You got to appreciate it when it comes, Shawn.
It's important to have it on the stat sheet at the end of the season. It's going to go in the awards banquet highlight reel. And I'm just picturing, head coach Sam Bruchhaus having his offensive lineman walk around with the ball all the time. And ball security for everyone, I suppose, is the right move there. I do really like Petrie. I can imagine, he sees Guyton have the ball and he's like, there is no way that this ball is not going to be a fumble. Like, Petrie knew he was going to be able to do it. And I'm glad that Barnett, who was, of course, the one that had that lovely head slap that we talked about previously. But if you're the person that's causing the fumble, it's nice that you're able to be the guy that can pick it up and go ahead and run that in. You get your name in the paper, get that touchdown.
Certainly. And speaking of guys getting their names in the paper, let's focus on the stars a little bit here. We got Joe Mixon, the new guy in town for the Houston Texans. He's been putting up a lot of yards, but we've also seen some frustration from him as well. In terms of EPA, he hasn't particularly been great. This hasn't been a particularly effective run defense when you look at the aggregate over the year. He has a breakout game against a poor defense. What did you see that you liked from him, Shawn?
I think Mixon, he just still has that outside zone running ability where in week 1 against the Colts, it felt like, their issues are solved. You throw Joe Mixon in there, you're able to just be a successful rushing offense. And you mentioned they had a really nice box score. He ends up with 3 touchdowns. And it's just still feels like on first and second down, there are too many situations where you're running into the back of a guy or just one person misses a block and it becomes a problem. So where I do think that Mixon solves some of their issues, it feels like that the rushing offense is still missing something. It's a little bit of like on run plays in general, right? You miss one block, it ends up as kind of a tackle at the line. And if the offense is just happy to run first and second down into, tight boxes kind of often, that makes third down a little bit harder. So it's good to see Mixon performing, of course, but I just continue to worry about the roof for the Cowboys, but then the ceiling for this Texans offense, just in how they're sort of hamstringing themselves.
Yeah. And, you look at the analytics and how they marry up to the film. And I think you hit the nail on the head, and it marries up with what I saw a quick glance at the analytics. Tough to gauge because it was a blowout, but we've seen over and over again that this Texans run game has not been able to generate a real quality success rate. That was the case today. They have a very, very good EPA generated for the game. However, the success rate was just not there. Again, a blowout, maybe take it with a grain of salt, but something interesting because it has become a pattern. And so the other superstar who came back, we love to see him. He was a guy we deeply considered for our all-pro list. I believe he made it. Nico Collins comes back. He's been lighting it up in virtually every metric we have, Shawn. Not the most productive game. Again, it's a blowout. Take it with a grain of salt. I believe he had 4 receptions. He did have a big play, which was fantastic to see. Great separation on that play. Great yards after catch. That's what we've been seeing all year from him when he's been healthy. Great to see Nico back.
Sam, I mean, the first play of the game, we got a Nico Collins touchdown. Like, what a beautiful story. After I said, like, in week 4, hey, this player can be the best receiver in the league. He has that absolute talent within him, and you just like see it right away. Unfortunately, you get called on in an illegal man downfield there. Where Sam, we've talked a lot about penalties, a lot of penalties in that game. A lot of you apparently committing penalties over the years. It's just something that I feel like we will keep digging into on these lives in general. But you mentioned that Collins inbreaker where you just love to see that, because when they isolate, it wasn't that situation, but when they do have the chance to isolate Collins one-on-one, I mean, defenses are going to have a ton of trouble just figuring that out. And it doesn't surprise me that, you throw your best receiver back into an offense, things look a little bit better. Of course, they didn't have everything straightened out. I think Stroud, had a few throws there that he certainly would have liked to take back, but having Collins in there is such a game changer where you're looking at the rest of the schedule. I think they have the Titans next and they have the Jaguars. They have a bye week. They have a little bit of time to just get things straightened out before I think they play the Dolphins and then the Chiefs a little bit later in the season, because when everything's like really, really rolling and the defense is playing well, Nico Collins is there. He's able to just create issues. When Stroud is playing well, I think they can really compete with a lot of teams, but just with that uneasiness, obviously, Collins is just coming back. I don't think he played every snap. Let's get things all figured out. Let's get things back to rolling. I think I worry a little bit about the ceiling for the team still.
Yep, certainly. And, we kind of have kept an eye on CJ Stroud. I saw him live. I liked the athleticism I saw. I liked the arm strength that I saw, but it just seems like he puts together some games where his completion percentage is under 50%. His passing total is under 100 yards. And I get those are counting stats, but at the end of the day, sometimes counting stats do tell the story. And there was a point in this game where it was tightening up despite, Cooper Rush playing quarterback and despite the Cowboys defense not playing super well, where he was again flirting around that 50% completion percentage margin. And it was like, is this who this guy is now? Luckily, it didn't turn out that way. I'm still excited for his progression. And moreover, I'm definitely excited to see him with Nico back in the lineup. But certainly, I'm not ready to pull the hot take meter on CJ Stroud just quite yet. He will avoid this week's entry where I'm going to talk about Anthony Richardson a little bit and get a little too excited, but that's okay. I'll save that for another podcast. So he catches a break this week. We're still keeping an eye on him, but I'm still excited for his upside, even though we do have concerns about the Texans offense. Let's not only focus, Shawn, on the Texans here. We get that they blew out the Cowboys. We get that this is, the nth time that the Cowboys have been blown out, but we, as sickos that love football, want to give a little shout out to a guy that has performed really well in the metrics, and that's just a really fun player, and we like to see fun players in the league, and that is KaVontae Turpin.
KaVontae Turpin, of course, in this game, you get a great example of him having a nice release. You're able to push the defensive back a little bit to the outside. You break inside, you catch that slant, and you just house that thing. And it's great to see for a player who, of course, we think of predominantly as a special teams player. And I really like now on his kick returns, he'll get the ball and he'll kind of slow play it a little bit and just accelerate so fast. I really just like seeing that level of athleticism from him. And Sam, it seems like maybe you make a case for giving that guy just a few more reps as a receiver as well.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say it's been limited reps. It has been sub 100 snaps that he's played, in a receiving role that we've tracked using our tracking metrics. But he's been a pretty good route runner in that time. And maybe, you see a better role. You see this offense kind of come together next year, or you see him go elsewhere at some point, and maybe he has a breakout year. But I'm glad to see him have a breakout play in this game. And obviously, he also pops up in our tracking metrics as just an absolute blazer. 40 time estimate, great. Burst, great. And I think that shows up on special teams, and I think it showed up on offense today. So haters and appreciators there. Any last hates or appreciates for you, Shawn?
I mean, Sam, I just always appreciate talking to you. You don't get the Richardson hot take off fully just yet. It really is bubbling for Richardson. I think across the league this week was a lot of fun rookie play. And Anthony Richardson's obviously not a rookie, but I mean, it's just hard not to be excited, I think, about some of the play that we saw.
Yeah, and there was so much fantastic things that we've seen from kind of the rookie quarterback class. We see Caleb kind of putting it together. We see Bo Nix really putting it together, but is it all there? We see Bryce Young, having median level games. That's good to see. We see CJ Stroud catching a big win. Maybe, these young quarterbacks are coming along, Shawn. You just got to let the boys get some reps. And that's what we will be talking about on Stats and Scheme, is it not, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm very excited for that, Sam. We're going to be, I guess it'll be on tomorrow morning. Everyone will get their lovely episode in their feed. It was our first one that we got to do together. You're in the host chair over here. I'm in the host chair over there. It feels like we're just playing musical chairs, just having a grand old time talking about football and seeing. I mean, you mentioned Jackie Chan. We don't talk about Police Story at all. A great movie. I think it's important that we combine our loves, football film, and then separate film as well.
No, yeah, it got to happen. And when you're a film watcher, you just got to extend it over to other types of film, whether that's, a Palme d'Or winner, Anora, that me and Shawn have talked about quite a lot. Maybe we'll get there around Oscar season, or whether it's, Cowboys-Texans on a Monday night. And so to close it out here, he's film lover Shawn Syed. Shawn, thank you for joining me, brother.
Appreciate you as always, Sam.
Yep. And I am Sam Bruchhaus. Check us out. Stats and Scheme podcast coming out tomorrow. SumerDaily coming at you every single day with some great insights. Also check out the Sumer Sports Show with Lindsey Rhodes and Thomas Dimitroff coming at you tomorrow as well. Signing off from Sumer Sports, he's Shawn Syed. I'm Sam Bruchhaus. Thanks for catching up with us live.